My husband and I's marriage counsellor lied to us. My husband of 7 months and I had a rough time after we got married when he came back from military deployment. Screaming matches, erectile dysfunction, resentment from deployment, me feeling sexually unattractive, etc. We went to a military-funded marriage counsellor for about 2 months before the therapist suddenly disappeared, saying he was getting transferred. Said he'd continue seeing us once a week, but suddenly his phone number changed and we had no idea what happened. We just stopped counselling altogether due to the scheduling issues. Our last session was around February or so. I thought the marriage counselling helped, as we had been doing better, or so I thought. But apparently my husband is still unhappy, albeit for other reasons now. Our sex life still sucks, and I feel horribly unwanted and undesirable despite being fit and attractive. We had a fight last night, and finally the substance of our individual counselling came out for the first time. We were shocked to say the least. So we had had both individual and couples counselling. We'd meet around once a week as a couple, and would alternate weeks individually. It came out last night. The counsellor had been telling us individually that the problem was all the other's fault. He gave us both some of the same story, but with some differences. He told us each that the other was being very closed off and defensive and not wanting to open up or discuss issues, that we were each blaming the other. This was while I was openly sharing with him my abandonment and anger issues and feeling insecure sexually, and providing him with background info from my previous therapy sessions with other counsellors. My husband claims that he would try to offer stories from his past as well, but that the counsellor would actually cut him off and say he wasn't the problem. He told my husband privately that I may have BPD and likely needed medication. This coincides chronologically with my husband out of nowhere yelling at me during arguments that I needed medication. I asked our counsellor if I should see a specialist after these fights, whether I really was showing these signs, and said honestly that I would get more intensive help if he thought that it would help our marriage. He laughed at my husband in individual sessions, saying there was nothing wrong with me, that my husband was deflecting by trying to diagnose me. Does he think he's a psychiatrist? He would laugh. He told me privately that my husband was emotionally and sexually underdeveloped and would never have a healthy relationship, sexually or emotionally, with anyone without serious change. That I should just move on, that he was not willing to change or admit to any issues and would run from all conflict. That each time the counsellor tried to broach issues, my husband would clam up and get defensive, that he didn't know what it truly meant to be married, and that he suspected there was something deeply rooted in my husband's past that was the root of all our problems, that my husband just needed more therapy. Note, we weren't paying for therapy, we got it for free due to military benefits. He told me that I was very smart and very attractive, and deserved a partner more on my level. My husband reports the counsellor, told him there was nothing wrong with him, that he was very mature and intelligent, and all of our problems stemmed from my psychosis. The aftermath. I am horrified by how many of our fights after the beginning of counselling were coloured by his statements. I was treating my husband like a 13-year-old boy, and my husband kept telling me that I needed psychiatric help. Our marriage has actually improved much after this time, but I now believe that it's because I worked on my anger issues and gave my husband the benefit of the doubt, while my husband became a better communicator in arguments. My husband now has different issues with our marriage, but we are still both reeling from conversations about the counsellor last night and wondering what kind of harm it may have caused. I don't really know what I'm asking here. I had insomnia all night about this, and I just don't know what to do. Edit. Direct question. Should I report the counsellor? And what are suggestions for how to move forward with my husband in this? In the comments, Leet Dude says, I would report him to his boss. He set you up to fail and then ditched you guys. Sounds like you're off to a good start. I'm sorry that you had to experience that. I suggest that you continue working on the issues that you have. Perhaps you can try documenting your emotions, like writing down what you feel. At first, it'll not make much sense, but with time, you'll get a bigger picture. You can write what you feel and the experiences that you had in counselling, and ask your husband to write what he felt and his experiences. Just writing down your experiences will make you feel better. I'm not sure about your legal options though, but for the moment, take one step at a time. At some point, it would be advisable to look for another counsellor. It may take time before you trust one, but counselling really does help you if you find the right person. By law, aren't therapists supposed to keep notes or recordings of each session? OP says there were no notes. He explained that it was all kept confidential as per military policy. This made sense to me at the time because a lot of military veterans don't want documentation that might hurt their careers and such, so he explained it as a policy issue meant to encourage soldiers to attend counselling instead of just bottling it all up. Quotes, he told me I was very smart and attractive and deserved a partner more on my level. This is out of order, besides the other stuff. I bet he hasn't put that in his notes. Find another therapist and move onwards and upwards. My friend was a therapist in the military for a couple of years, and she's amazing at it. Most of them are great, some bad apples, but don't let that spoil it for you. Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. My ex-husband and I went to couples counselling provided by the military through the military helpline. Anyways, you want to know how those counsellors got paid? By taking notes and faxing it to some kind of liaison. It was all confidential, and I doubt it was used for any kind of statistics type thing. It was mostly to ensure that you guys were talking and progress was being made, and that the counsellor isn't making you up so they can get free money. The military helpline wants to make sure people are actually getting help. That guy had to be taking notes, or at least forging notes saying that you were all butterflies and rainbows so he could get paid. I don't know if there's a person you could ask to get a copy of his notes or anything. Maybe the reason he dropped off the face of the earth is because he got caught by another couple and is facing investigation. I still think you should report him to whomever recommended him in the first place. He's basically scamming the military for money and ruining relationships. Update. So this is an update more than 3 years later. A lot happened since then, and it occurred to me that maybe I should post an update in case anyone here was around for that. Summary. I was the wife who was seeing a marriage counsellor with my husband, both jointly and individually. Things were only getting worse and worse, and it was only after a blow-up fight that my husband and I compared notes and realized the counsellor had been feeding each of us lies. Counsellor was telling me that my husband was emotionally 12 years old and would never be capable of a relationship, while reassuring my husband it was all well with him. Meanwhile, he was telling my husband that I had borderline personality disorder and needed medication. When my husband started accusing me of being mentally ill, I brought this up to the counsellor, who then began making fun of my husband for saying such a thing. Does he think he's a psychiatrist or something? And then he actually laughed. Counsellor reassured me that I was a beautiful and intelligent woman and would do great once I left my husband. The counsellor, who was provided by the military through their family services, ended up transferred a few weeks after we discovered this. We couldn't figure out if he got canned for abusing some other couple, if he retired, or some other shenanigans. Well, fast forward to today, my husband and I are doing great now. We went on vacation, both of us changed jobs, moved, and we are very happily married now 4 years later. We travel, adopted a couple of kitties, and bought a house in a place that we both love. How we got here. We both read some self-help books, started giving each other the benefit of the doubt, got better at communicating. I left my super high-stress job, he changed careers, and everything sort of did a 180. Funny enough, my old job had been killing me, and when I mentioned to the counsellor that I thought maybe I should find another job, since it was so dysfunctional, he protested against it. My husband and I did not report him at the time. We were concerned he would retaliate against my husband in some way, as my husband was in the armed forces for 1.5 years after all this. I'm embarrassed that we didn't report him. We were scared and overwhelmed. I'm considering calling that base's family services now and filing an official report. I'm not sure if it'll matter. So much time has passed. That's all really. You were all such a great help then. I thought I might as well post this in case anyone around here remembered. In the comments, Sweetl says, "This happened to my parents too. They found out what happened when my mum left her email open on the computer, and my dad saw what the counsellor had been saying. It turned out that he had done this with many more couples. Many of them divorced after never realizing what happened." It turned out he was a textbook sociopath and just got off on the power of breaking couples up. Please consider reporting. This is likely not a one-time thing. He probably did it before and is doing it now. There will be possibly dozens or hundreds of couples carrying hurt, confusion, and children of those marriages who never get the resolution that you do. And OP replies, "This is appalling. I had no idea this was even a dynamic. There are so many predators out there. I'm trying to find him and figure out where he's working. Also decided to call the base on Monday. Quotes, started giving each other the benefit of the doubt, got better at communicating. I mean, this right here would do so many people and couples good. It's so sad that you had to go through all of that to get there. Although I wonder, without some craziness, what else would get people to let go of their need to be right and to learn those lessons?" OP says, "It really would. The one good thing Dr. Lecter did was tell me, your husband said some stupid things in arguments. He doesn't actually mean to hurt you. This blew my mind because, as someone very good with words, I couldn't understand how someone could say such hurtful things without harboring malice. But I followed his advice and was much more patient when my husband would say something ridiculous. Also, finding a new job helped me a ton. I didn't recognize how much of a nervous wreck I was thanks to that God-forsaken office. I became much more even-keeled overnight. This did wonders. I guess I just assumed that it was this way everywhere, but every IC and couples counsellor that I've ever spoken to was adamant that they wouldn't cross over. If they were your IC, they were your IC, and would not become your couples counsellor because it crossed a professional boundary, and vice versa. Is that not typically the case? Yup, that's my understanding as well, although it sounds about right for the military to say they don't have the budget for multiple therapists to be available. I've worked in mental health for the past 15 or so years. To further my own personal resilience and understanding, I took an Intro to Counselling course, not with the purpose of being a counsellor, but to develop some insight in managing difficult conversations and whatnot. As part of the course, we had a session dedicated to unethical counsellors, where they discussed counsellors who were in the role for their own personal gratification. You could argue that we all are, but anyway, I digress. These unethical counsellors could include counsellors who have blurred their own boundaries, have savior complexes, or those who purposely try to meddle and control their clients. They did reiterate that it's not everyone, and I think that it was more to get us to think about our reasons for being on the course, but it definitely opened my eyes. Our next post is by user illprofessional503, titled, "Am I the asshole for avoiding my childhood friend after she called me a beggar for living in my ex-husband's house?" My ex-husband Carter and I divorced almost 4 years ago. He divorced me. I was blindsided because I thought we had a very happy marriage. Unfortunately, this year I was in a hit and run and was hospitalized. My insurance didn't cover much, and they never found who did it. I drained my savings. I couldn't live in my apartment anymore since I could no longer physically walk up 5 flights of stairs. I had a job but was let go. I was struggling, and it was a low point in my life. Carter and I hadn't kept in touch, but he contacted me and said that I could live in one of his spare rooms. I had no other options. I offered to pay him rent, but he refused. He has a maid for chores, and I cook for him sometimes. It's okay. He's very chatty and bubbly, and if I close my eyes, I can pretend that we're friends again, and we never took the leap into a relationship and a divorce. My childhood friend Claire called me to express sympathies that I couldn't find a place. I told her that I was living with Carter. She insisted on coming over, as she also had been friends with him and had refused to take a side. When she arrived, Claire started to talk about how this was a bad situation. She asked me if I paid rent, and I told her no. She said that his pity would end, and asked if I wanted to be a beggar for the rest of my life. I told her I wasn't a beggar. She said she would tell our friends. I pleaded with her not to. Claire then said that if I didn't think what I was doing was wrong, I wouldn't have cared if she told everyone. I feel humiliated and ashamed. I have been avoiding her. She called me yesterday and said that I was being childish and emotionally manipulative for behaving that way. Am I the asshole? In the comments, Realistic Head 4279 says, "Not the asshole. Your friend, Claire, is a busybody and is sticking her nose into your business where she does not belong. Her words were cruel and judgmental and likely inaccurate. You need to limit your focus with her and not feel that you have to defend your choices to anyone except yourself. And OP says, I'm not trying to be a beggar. I've offered to pay. I would even do chores and clean, but he has a housekeeping service. He eats takeout often, but he hasn't turned down any dishes that I've offered him. That's the only way that I can thank him. Not the asshole. She is. Who died and put her in charge? What you do is none of her business. And OP says, Claire's always been very involved in what I do because she says that I don't make the right decisions, like marrying Carter. She told me that it wouldn't work out because he'd get bored of me, and she wasn't wrong. She's held that as proof that she knows better. If Claire is so concerned about you living with your ex, why isn't she offering to help you out? Instead of cutting you down and trying to make you think that this is a bad decision, she should be helping you. The only person being emotionally manipulative is Claire. In my honest opinion, if your friends are being judgmental about your situation and they aren't offering other options, then they really aren't very good friends. OP, don't worry about other people's opinions of your current situation that they can't possibly understand unless they've gone through a similar situation. Just take care of yourself, heal, and continue to do your best to appreciate your ex for his generosity. P.S. You are not a beggar. You're a human in a difficult situation, and someone that actually cares about you offered to help you in your time of need. OP replies, she believes in everyone working hard for themselves and then not asking for handouts. She said she could help me look for apartments or pass along my request for an apartment at ground level, but that's the extent of help. I've tried to show my appreciation for Carter, and he is happy to hear it. He told me that I can stay for as long as I'd like, or forever, but I can't wait to save up and find an apartment that I can live in. He is too close and affectionate with me. There's part of me that still loves him, and he keeps poking those parts of my heart. So let me get this straight. Claire, whose family has money and is married to a wealthy man, has the nerve to think that other people should work hard for themselves and not ask for handouts? What a hypocrite! And Claire is not your friend. Friends do not kick a friend when they get hit by a car and are doing their best to pick themselves up and move on with their life. OP says, Claire is privileged in many ways, but she's also very intelligent. I think it makes her believe that she would be successful regardless of what happened. But I'm also smart, and life dealt me a bad hand. I did the best I could. I lived frugally and saved money and followed all the rules, and yet all my hard work has been wiped out. I can't try harder out of my situation. I can only try my best. Update. So a couple of days after my post, Claire reached out and apologized for using harsh words. I accepted her apology, but things were still uncomfortable for me. She said she found an apartment I could live in. It was on the first floor and had access to public transportation. The rent was high, but not out of my budget. I would be living with 3 other people in the apartment. I checked it out and it was acceptable. I told Carter that Claire had found an apartment for me, and he flipped out. He said I couldn't live there because it was a dangerous part of town. We discussed it and then came to a compromise. He would feel better if we went out to a hotel in the area for a few days to see how dangerous it was. It was fine for the first few days, but one morning a man followed me. It was frightening. Carter said that it was proof that the area wasn't safe. I told him this was the only option I had for now, unless I wanted to go back to my parents' house and find a new job there or sleep on friends' couches. My parents live in a developed country and I don't speak the language well, so that is my absolute last resort. Carter reminded me that he said that I could stay as long as I liked. I told him that I didn't want to be a burden on him anymore. It was very kind of him to offer, but I can't take advantage of his kindness indefinitely. He said Claire was putting thoughts in my head. I offered to pay him rent again, and he finally agreed, but he deliberately wastes the rent money on silly things to prove a point. I told him that, but he said that if I didn't like it, I could stop paying or pay him in another way, and I dropped the conversation. Claire asked me why I hadn't moved into the apartment. I said I was paying rent to Carter, and then she chewed me out. Claire and Carter's social circles overlap, so Carter found out about how Claire was saying that I chose to stay there even when she found me a new place to live. He got into an argument with me and said that I should stop talking to Claire. He made an ultimatum of him or Claire, and I chose him. Since then, he's been very happy. I'm happy to see how cheerful he is, but I can't handle the constant hugs or snuggles or pinching. It makes me feel bad and dredges up bad thoughts. I feel inadequate and crushed because he may be able to be platonic friends with me, but I still haven't gotten past the hurt. On a positive note, I started physical therapy and signed up for a free counseling program through my work. I have a tiny budget, so I have to make do. Now in the comments. Okay, reading all the posts and your comments, are you sure Carter doesn't regret the divorce and is harboring romantic feelings for you, especially since you could have died? Also, Claire is completely into Carter and doesn't like that he cares about you. She may not want him, but she doesn't want him to want you, especially if she can't have him. Quotes, I'm happy to see how cheerful he is, but I can't handle the constant hugs or snuggles or pinching. Nothing here sounds healthy, honestly. Yup, Opie is between the devil and the deep blue sea. What Carter is doing for you, not even many friends would do. I think he still has a thing for you. Claire is not your friend. She is indeed jealous of you, no matter how many good things she has going for her. The one thing she wants the most, you have it. Yup, she is jealous, even if OP thinks she can't be. Perhaps she feels it's unfair that OP gets to stay in a nice house rent-free. Perhaps she thinks it's unfair that despite her beauty, etc., she never got to live in a nice house rent-free. Perhaps her husband is mean to her, and she's jealous that OP's ex is kind to her. Who knows exactly, but yeah, she's jealous. Yeah, this doesn't sound platonic. It sounds like he wants to get back together in some way, and that Claire had her sights set on him. I agree. I have a feeling that things are going to get very messy very soon. Oh, for sure. I don't know why she would care about OP living with her ex-husband while she recovers. Like, if the situation works for them, why would she care? Why spread it all around to all her friends that OP is a beggar? They both need to tell her off and cut her out. And that's where I'm going to end today's episode, guys. I do hope you enjoyed. If you did, let me know what you thought of it in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.